Conversation with the Modern Girl. This is our first recording that we're doing on YouTube, and I'm very proud of that. Today, I am in the company of Miss Courtney as well as Tamika, and we are going to discuss today some conversation around generational differences in the workplace. I don't know if you guys have ever been on the job and worked with others and you kind of see your differences, but at the same time, sometimes it all comes together and sometimes it doesn't work good. But I wanted to talk about these different generations and just kind of have this open discussion on some of you guys' experiences and some of your thoughts surrounding that. Now, the generations that we do know of, we know of all of them, but we're talking about baby boomers. Baby boomers first are those generations. Most of those guys and women are retired. Most of them retire or they're almost at retirement. Okay. So then we have Gen X. Gen X is 1965 to 1979. And those people are about 45 years old to 60 years old, and we're still in the workplace. Okay. Millennials, they are the biggest crowd of people that are working in our workforce. They are running the workforce right now. That is the largest number. I think it's like 75% of the work job space is millennials. And they are aged from 29 to 44. Then we have Gen Z. They're budding and coming along, and that is from 1995 to 2012. And they're like aged from 13 to 28 years old. So just to kind of jump right into it, I just want to pose the question about work ethic first. We want to talk about what is your perspective or how do you perceive the differences in work ethic between your generation and the younger generations? Are there any specific values or practices that you believe have shifted over time? Either one of you all can jump in and talk at any time.
Well, Courtney here, I always have an opinion of some sort. Um, I definitely see a difference between the three generations. And from my perspective, it seems to be that the performance of being busy has gotten less important each
Mm.
stage. Um, Millennials might be the one exception. I feel like we really thrive on just being anxious, whether that's performative or just where we are in our lives. But when I see Gen Z, they are just like, I don't have to pretend to be stressed. It's okay. I don't care about this job, and I won't
Mm-hmm.
be here in 6 years. And I think that's beautiful. I love this for them. I wish I had it in me, but the baby boomers who I do know are not thrilled. They are not thrilled with the complete
No, not at
lack
all.
of performing stress about their jobs.
Not at all. No, those baby boomers are dedicated. They know about perseverance and sticking on a job, riding it out to retirement, having financial security. They're just not going to take those types of risk, a little bit more
Exactly.
secure. And I think our generation after that, I'm Gen X, I think the generation after that grew up under those baby boomers, and they kind of instilled that into us too, that work ethic, that dedication, that securing a job, securing your future. And then we have those millennials that come along and they just rock our worlds. What do you think, Tamika?
I agree with the both of you guys. Courtney, you actually have a different perspective that I never thought about as far as, admiring the fact that they're able to just not be stressed out about certain things. I mean, they do have this just California vibe, everything's just blowing in the wind. I'm a millennial. I can't talk. I'm a
Mhm.
millennial myself. And I'm one of those people where, I'm always looking at numbers. I'm trying to get to the next level. I'm trying to, figure this out or figure that out. And I've had to train a couple of Gen Z employees, and I wasn't too excited about it. I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and they're highly intelligent. I will not take that away from them. However, it's that thing of I don't have to be here. To be honest, I'm fresh out of college. I'm just trying to find my way. Something better comes along. I'm probably going to be an influencer. Those things that they actually say. And that worries me. It worries me just because once the millennials are getting ready to retire, um, what do we have set in place where it's like we know that the workforce will continue and at a standard that is productive for everyone involved. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Generation Z. I don't see that. I mean, I hope for the best, but I don't see that happening.
Right,
I don't.
right. I can totally agree with that. That is kind of, nerve wracking to think about that. And they do have that attitude of, I'm just doing this temporary. I can just follow. I read an article the other day that was talking about how that generation will start a job and work through training and then quit. You
Absolutely.
know, I that blows my mind. And that this is habit. This is habit forming, and this is what they do because they don't want to take on the full responsibility. But hey, I'll do this for a moment, and then I move to the next thing. So it makes you wonder what will happen. What do you guys think about AI and the rising of AI? Do you think a lot of our jobs will be replaced with that because Gen Z just does not have that push or that work ethic that we're used to?
I gotta jump in and defend who I'm gonna call my little cousins. I'm gonna defend them because if there's one thing that I have faith in, if I don't have faith in anything else, I have faith that Uncle Sam is going to come and get these tax dollars. And I think
Mhm.
when those types of pressures do finally hit you, that is the motivation
Yeah.
to stick with a certain job. It's you've actually hit a amount of money or milestone that's important to you. And I just think about being fresh out of college. I could work minimum wage, right above at company A or company B. I'm still making, we're in the early aughts here. So, like, we're looking for $45,000, something like that is what I'm trying to look for. And if you aren't giving it to me because you told me that the salary band doesn't pay more than 35, and I've had the benefit of being like coming up under millennials who are like, nah, you gotta leave. Like, I
Mhm.
can't leave, but you should leave because there's nothing here. I just have a mortgage to pay. So I have to stay.
Absolutely.
I
Right.
just think that they're encouraged. And then you think about the gig economy. I'm also coming from tech. So, like, I have worked for all these companies where the job is very much a gig. And I just think that has also trained this understanding of work being something you do to get by and almost pulled people away from the idea of a career. And with I almost see this bifurcating. So there's going to be people who really lean in and take advantage and can go really far because they're learning how to use these tools. And then there's going to be the people who continue being gig workers and who almost like maybe don't get the benefits of using these tools. They might actually be, these tools might be leading their work, right? So you think about Uber, you think about delivery folks.
Yeah.
AI is going to be who's telling them who to pick up and who not to pick up and what food to deliver. That's not going to be a team of people pretty soon. So
Right.
I'm fascinated to see how this
Yeah.
turns out.
Right. What do you think, Tamika?
Um, I agree. I actually think that maybe we're being conditioned for AI to pretty much do most of the jobs, especially with Generation Z. My background is education, and I'm big about attention span and technology. I just think that, technology has blessed us with a lot of things as far as being progressive, but it's also decreased our attention span. So with Generation Z, it's almost like they were designed to not be able to think outside the box, to not have open minds, and to actually not have those jobs and let AI to take over those jobs. And I could be wrong. Once again, I pray and I hope that I am wrong, but I just feel like they're conditioned to not perform well in
Mm.
structure environments.
I understand. I see that. And then, do you think like their emotional intelligence when it comes to challenges on the job, and that varies across different generations, how our temperament is and how we approach things. I've never been combative with a supervisor before, but I've seen that type of behavior before in other generations. Do you think the younger generations prioritizes emotional awareness differently than older generations?
I'll go first on this one. I actually think that older generations, the emotional awareness and intellect is a little lower than um the younger generations. I feel as though, because it was taboo to seek things like therapy or to go through and process trauma and things such as that, that a lot of the older generations have just bottled up their
Mm,
emotions. And so, as far as being able to deal with, recognize what they're feeling, it isn't there.
right.
And especially in the in the workplace, it's more common for them to lash out or
Mm,
to be insubordinate, as opposed to millennials and Generation Z. I feel like we're able to articulate our feelings in a way that is not disrespectful or being insubordinate.
mm. That's a good point. I can see that. I really can. And like you said, that generation, my generation, of course, does bottle up a lot of things. We come from the generation of sit down, be quiet, shut up. You know, do as you're told. That's the generation we come from. So we look at superiors completely different than our next generation. And I think we raise and are rearing our children to have that freedom as well. I know I've really talked to my children about expressing their feelings and not doing something that you don't feel comfortable with doing, or speaking up and speaking out. So yeah, I can see that. What do you think, Courtney?
I I do wonder about the emotional intelligence in thinking through the strategy of how to get what you want. And I do give a lot of this to being 25 and under, 20, 30 and under, if I'm going to be totally transparent. I just think there are lessons that come with age of, there's a reason that honey catches more flies than vinegar.
Right.
But until you have seen the power of what being nice or what, um, I don't know about your background. My family is from the South. And so we always talked about women could steer, like women might be the neck. And so if men are the head of the household, women would be the neck
Mm-hmm.
and so you're the person of steering. And I think about that a lot when you're at work because what I've seen is a lack of hierarchy in organizations. Like I've seen a lot of that hierarchy be broken down. And so even the reinforcement of respectability a little bit and just respecting rank has fallen away. And again,
Mm,
I'm willing to say this is partially my industry. Tech is very young and everyone likes a flat organization. But I do think that that has meant that because there is not a reinforced way of being with, I'll say with people with seniority, I don't like superiors, um, that you see a lot of that melting away. There used to be like formal things of here is how I'm going to list out the people in this email. Here is how I am going to address my skip level. And
mm-hmm.
now, in a world where I could slack them as
Mm-hmm.
easily as you can, I think
Mm-hmm.
that often for people who lack professional experience, and I'm saying that you are this is a job you are keeping to pay the bills to
Yeah.
not be homeless. I think that a lot of that polish just isn't there yet, and I'm thrilled for them if they were not people who had to work their way through college. But it seems like we have just not had to be a teller at a bank
Mm-hmm.
to pay for school anymore, and we are
Right.
just getting somewhere. And this is your first career, and I wasn't prepared. I thought that I was getting people who everyone had had some jobs before,
Yes. Been through the
and that is
struggle.
not the case. That is it. I'm thrilled for them. Thrilled for
Yes.
them. And also,
Hats off to them.
my millennial nerves, I only have one left, and they sometimes are on it. I got
Mm-hmm.
they're both sides.
What about maturity? People will argue or say that maturity is perceived differently among the generations, and I think we kind of touched on that just now talking about it. So, what would you define maturity, and how do you see it manifesting differently in the various age groups?
That's interesting. I don't know that I have thought about that. Tamika, it looks like you had an answer that
Hmm.
can buy me some
Come
time.
on with it, Tamika. Come on.
So I thought about this, and um, I'm really not certain how to articulate it, but I do think that emotional intellect and maturity go hand in hand along with responsibility.
Mm,
I feel like the level of maturity comes with life experiences, how you were raised, your environment. Um, we often say, oh, well, this person is of a certain age and they're mature, but that's not the case. And it depends on those life experiences. You know,
Mm,
you can be a 20-year-old who has had to have responsibility, who has had to, you know, carry on the family or pay bills or even raise a child. And your maturity level may be surpassing that of someone who's 60 and who's never really had to have any struggles or
mm-hmm.
any responsibility. So it's just it's a variable. I think it's an individual thing as well, because what may be mature to me may not be maturity to the next person. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely have to agree with you there. I do think that when we say maturity, though, what I tend to be thinking of is does that person communicate in the way that I expect them to, or are they surpassing that goal? Because I could think a 20-year-old is very mature, but I still wouldn't put you in charge of my taxes, and then I could think a 6-year-old is very mature, and I know you throw
Mm-hmm.
temper tantrums. So I think there's a little bit of each of that, and I agree with you, Tamika. I think this is really about life experience and the people who have either held career type of jobs where they've been somewhere for 2 or 3 years. I think they have an understanding of the expectations, particularly the unspoken rules of how to communicate in a way that if this is still your first or second job, you might not have that. And so I think it
Right.
just really varies on where people are in their career as
I
far
agree with
as
that.
work experience.
That the life experiences does. I think that does mature you. You know, that kind of grooms you into who you're going to be and how you handle conflict, how you communicate, which I kind of want to segue into about communication styles. You know, if you look across the generations, there are different ways that we communicate our needs, different ways we communicate who we are as far as what we represent and what we bring to the table. Sometimes we have people that are very timid about their work experience and they're not speaking out about it. They want the resume to talk for them. Then you have others that can flow and sell themselves. And you have others that feel like either you want it or you don't. So what? I don't care. It's like that. So, I think that can, how they communicate and the differences and how it impacts in the workplace and the workflow as well. How they build rapport in the workplace also kind of stands out. What do you think about that through the generations?
Rapport is right. I'm inhaling. The rapport is, I think, where the generations fall down. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that is where the biggest divide is, because you're code switching, and that's not always a term that is used outside of the Black community. Maybe it is.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
I have not seen it used that way. Uh, and you are. So if I'm chopping it up with Debbie in HR, who looks like a very lovely grandmother, I'm gonna find the one cooking recipe I know to talk about because that's appropriate work chit chat. But the
Yeah.
moment I hit anybody who is under 30, have you seen this latest TikTok?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
your TikTok page my TikTok page?
Right.
And I also had to learn how to code switch to build rapport with each generation, because we have interconnected needs. Again, going back to these flat organizations, we have interconnected needs, and nobody has power anymore. So now I have
Yeah.
to be able to
Absolutely.
persuade both Gen Z and baby boomers, who always have the money, to be to be on the same side and rowing in the same direction. So I don't know that the young folks are building rapport in the same way, but again, I tend to think that comes with experience.
Mhm.
And once you share that too personal TikTok, you can't take it back, and I think that teaches you something.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the lesson, but I feel like that's where we're going.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. And that TikTok carries, they perk up when they talk about that. I was at a job and the manager told me she came across my TikTok and I was like, what? How? And she was like, I think the algorithm may have sent yours there because I had your phone number. And I was just like egg face, like gagged, like, and I didn't have anything inappropriate on there, but it just brought me to that realization of how important and how much that carries a lot of weight. And I understand why like a lot of people will lose their jobs behind social media because you can be found, whether you disguise your name or not, but you can be found. But when you think about baby boomers, a lot of them they don't have time for that. They may scroll and laugh a little bit. You know, the grandkids show them something, their children show them something, but they're not active in that. What were your thoughts, Tamika? You was going to piggyback on?
Um, I agree. I think that the communication actually ties in with everything else. The fact that Generation Z, they're not expected to be in the workplace or a specific job for a long time. So trying to build that rapport, they don't feel like it's necessary. Developing those relationships is really not necessary for them to do so because it's like, hey, I'm going to be here for maybe 6 months to a year. Or even if I'm going to stay with this company, I'm with the forward progression as quickly as possible. So I know this is a starting place. So I'm really not trying to develop a relationship with you because you're not where I'm trying to get to.
Mm,
So that's definitely something that is a lost art, communicating. And as Courtney said, those unspoken rules or etiquette, it's not there at all. Even
mm,
with the emails, it's like
mm,
saying hello, good morning, thank you. Those things
mm-hmm.
are,
Right, right,
I sometimes I'm like, am I reading a text message or
right,
like,
right.
is this the right thing? You meant to send that to me? And it's just like, yeah, you know, take it or leave it.
Nonchalantly, yeah. I communicated back with you. That's what and I think the experience with COVID made it worse because a
Absolutely.
lot of people working, remotely and they didn't have to engage and everything was over, online. I think that just intensified it. But yeah, I agree with that. It seems like that communication style is null and void, somewhat so, you
Yes.
know?
Did you have you guys seen this story? So I was on TikTok as I am.
Hmm.
And speaking of Gen Z and emotional intelligence, there's this lovely young man who he cannot be older than 28 years old.
Mhm.
And he is in finance. He is going to work every day and he's making content. And what he calls his employer is the white collar plantation. And when I heard it, thank you, because when I heard that, I was
Oh
like,
my
he
God.
can't be employed. He can't be. That
Yes.
you are cosplaying work because the moment they see that you and I'm multiple videos, I was fascinated. I'm like,
Wow.
I have to keep seeing this because you're telling me you're in finance, and then he brings us into his office.
Oh
So I'm
wow.
looking at all these things, and I'm like, you are called you
You
so I'm
can't
in
do
your
that.
office. I see the background. So
Right.
that means that if I'm HR, I could walk into the office and do the same thing. And
Yes.
Yes.
you're calling them the white collar plantation.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then when that man was let go and made another TikTok about it, he was on the internet stunned and
Mm,
expected the internet to ride for him. And the
no.
first comment that had thousands of likes is like, you called them the white collar plantation?
What did you
Question mark.
expect? What did you expect? You may
And I'm
think
like,
that, but you
I like a
definitely can't
joke, but
say
like the white collar plantation?
it. That's that emotional intelligence. That's that lack of communication. That's that nonchalant attitude. That's I can say what I want. I can do what I want. It's like social media is a weapon for them, and they feel invincible in that sense. And it gets you into trouble. I mean,
Yes.
like I said, you can think that, but you definitely can't say that, especially on a platform of such.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the people are going to see this. People know you.
Yes.
You need a
But I
little
don't
bit of
think they,
emotional
I'm sorry, I
intelligence.
didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, go ahead.
I don't think they even think that far ahead. It's like the microwave society of I'm living in the moment. Of course, there isn't any consequences for my actions. Of course, no one's going to see this. And if they do, they're going to understand where I was coming from at that time. And they're not going to take me serious. I'm just, expressing myself. I honestly believe that's the thought process is
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to do it. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to think about anything else. I'm not even going to think about the fact that I may not be able to eat next week because I don't
Right.
have a job because I need to get this out right now. So,
Yes.
Yes.
It's pressing. I must say it. And I'm
yeah.
going to jump on Black Twitter, and they're going to have my back.
And what they
Not
will
at
not
all.
have is rent money come the first. They will have
Yeah.
your back and they will not have rent with you. And
I mean, and how long do you, and and he's more than likely doing it, as all of them are, to go viral.
Mhm.
The hopes of going viral to make that easy money from your phone. And we have to be serious. And this is probably just me, Gen X, thinking, how long do you think that's going to last?
it is
It
not
may
this year.
last a while, but how long do you think that's going to last? As fast as you make it, as quickly as you can spend it out. And can you honestly think you can maintain a lifestyle that way? I mean, maintain it. You may be able to obtain some things now, but what about 20 years from now? What about 15 years from now? What about 10? I don't think they think long term like they just like Tamika was saying. It's right now, it's instant, that microwave type thinking. I got to get it done. I can get it right here. If I go viral, I'm set. I think it was a guy on TikTok that made millions of dollars from just shrugging his shoulders, not saying anything, just shrugging his shoulders. And for some reason, everyone just kept looking at what he was doing as he was going different places and making the what face or whatever. So I don't
And you
know.
know, I I think that millennials at minimum have had the benefit of seeing some of these waves of internet stars and how it can go away so quickly. Because I think about that first wave of early YouTubers, right? And it's like the Alyssa Ashleys of the world, and she's pivoted from makeup into fitness and is sort of doing
Mm-hmm.
her own thing now. And we have been old enough to see the rise and the eventual pivot of a lot of these early influencers. Or I don't know if you're familiar, but Heidi and Spencer, they were on the hills. They were known like for being like the villains. In the
Yes.
LA fires, their home was one of the first to burn down
Oh
and like them be
no.
celebrities.
Wow.
And Spencer was like riding this wave of new notoriety and just being really relatable because he understands that the you paying attention to me is this is a flash in the pan. I
Mm,
have to run with it and now make you interested. I have to have enough business sense to put behind this to make it useful so I can continue to have this influence. And I
mm.
just wonder if Gen Z, particularly the folks who are interested in being influencers, if they've done their homework and seeing that every 10, 12 years, there's a new wave. And
It
it's really
is.
challenging if you're on that previous wave to stay popular, to maintain with the new trends. People who are popular on YouTube took a really long time to get on TikTok because what
Hmm.
makes a great long form video is almost the antithesis of what makes a great TikTok.
Right.
Yeah.
And understanding that to me is
Hmm.
how you can build a business for yourself of
Right.
influencing because maybe it's not going to be on TikTok, but you know what your pillars of content are, you know how you're going to express yourself, and you can bring that anywhere. But you know what that takes maturity, that takes business sense, that takes
Right.
understanding that going viral doesn't mean anything if you
Right.
don't go viral for things that matter to you that you can keep talking about. And I
Exactly.
don't want to keep getting my soapbox, but that Hawkta girl, did you see that she is now in a lawsuit because
Wow.
she was promoting cryptocurrency because she didn't know what she was doing. She had a viral moment, said yes to everything to get this money, and
Hmm.
now people were scammed out of their entire life savings behind a crypto coin named after her.
Oh
And
my
she's just
God.
like
Wow.
she's cooperating with the police and just being like, I had no idea. They just told me it was a good thing
Mm-mm.
and I was just the marketing I just signed the
Right.
contract. I just promoted the thing. And it's just more proof that that going viral, that being an influencer is a business.
Hmm.
And whatever your business is, you have to care about it. You have to be about the business that
That's
pays
right.
you. And if it's going to be influencing, don't burn your bridges at corporate life because there's lessons to teach you there. Like
Exactly.
if you're gonna try to lean into social media, do you want to be known for calling your employer the white collar plantation? What brand wants to
Exactly.
talk to you?
No brand. And what employer is going to employ you after that? You blackballed
Hello.
yourself, you know? And that, and one thing, Gen X and some millennials hold this as well. Education is always the key. You can never go wrong with education. When all else fails, you can always fall back on that. Education can only propel you to where it is you want to be,
Yeah.
even if you want to be an influencer. If you want to market, go to school for marketing. It's nothing wrong with going to college and doing TikToks or whatever on the side. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with going and getting a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30. It's nothing wrong with that. We can't shy away from that. That's the bread and butter. Everything else is, adding to it. And you see these things about several streams of income and this, and that's wonderful. But it takes, like you said, dedication. It takes education. It takes some type of business savvy. It takes you understanding and knowing what you're pushing. Like you said, you got to have longevity. It's got to be something that you are passionate about and that you know. Everyone that calls himself a guru is not a guru. Everyone that says they're
Absolutely.
this is not that. It's constantly honing your craft, developing yourself. I see a lot of people that were like saying inspirational things, and now all of a sudden we're life coaches, and we're now going back to school to get degrees in, social work or therapy of some sort, because you may have gotten viral or you may have had these conferences or whatnots, and now you feel like, oh yeah, I know everything. When you get in school, you'll see you don't, and it's a process and it's ethics, and it's a way to communicate, like we just talked about. It's about having emotional intelligence, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy. What do you all think about that?
Well, you said a word that we don't hear that often, ethics.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that has been removed from not just the workplace, but society in general. Morals,
Mm,
um, respect. Those are things that are like taboo. Like it's like by any means necessary. Right is wrong and wrong is right.
right.
Um, so I think we're expecting something that maybe isn't there. And I often think about, as a millennial, I don't have any kids myself, but I sometimes blame our generation for what is taking place now, because we were a part of that generation where what your parents said, that's it, that's
Mm-hmm.
law. You don't talk back. You don't, if they tell you you're going to go to school, get a degree, and you're going to get a job, and you're going to work until you get ready to retire, that's what you were expected to do, and anything
Exactly.
else was not acceptable. And so
Exactly.
because we were raised that way, I think that we were more lenient, as far as how we wanted the next generation to be. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little too lenient, because those values that we were raised on, they're not there anymore.
Right.
So, maybe we're a little bit responsible. I would say myself, once again, I don't have any kids, but when I'm having conversations with Gen Z, although I may be like, oh, what was really going on in your head, I still try to think about, like, okay, maybe you haven't had those experiences. Maybe no one has ever told you that, hey, certain things you need to do to get to the next step. That
Mm.
being a good person is not something that you just do when you're in front of people, but it's something that has to be in your heart. It has to be
Integrity.
part of your
Yeah.
character.
Mm-hmm.
So, eh, what are we expecting if they haven't been taught? If social media doesn't teach them to have integrity, or to actually know what ethics is, or to be an outstanding individual and a productive member of society.
Mm.
um it's not there. That's all I can say. It's
No,
just not there.
it's not. And how do you bridge that gap? How do we start to bridge that gap between that generation, to better understand each other, to work together effectively together, I just, in working, like, you guys were saying, what are some techniques or what are some things that you found that has been helpful for you when you are crossing those generations and working with those individuals in the workplace?
I feel like my superpower is my curiosity. And that's what I lean into when I'm working with, I think, anyone with a different communication style. And I start with, hey, here's how I like to work. Here's how I interpret these types of things. How do you work? How do you like to work? What is motivating to you? And if they don't know, then I say, like, well, here's what works for me. Noodle on it. And then when you have a, when you come to an answer, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
But here's how I like to work. And then I like team charters. I like things where we come together, and even if there's three of us and we say, here, how are we going to work together? What is a reasonable expectation? If someone slacks you, you're off, you don't get back. Like, okay, when you get back within 48 hours of coming back online, does it feel reasonable?
Hmm.
Okay, that feels reasonable, and we can start to chart these courses together, and it also takes a lot of the implicit and makes it explicit. And I
Mm-hmm.
have found that to be the major unlock, and that's between all the generations. I think that there was a point in time when there were just norms, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think those norms really shift from company to company, really shift from person to person. And so just being able to make it very explicit of here are the rules of engagement, and if everyone can't go look at the same doc, I have to take it on myself and say, okay, well, I didn't communicate in a way that I could point to and say you always had access to information. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's I told everyone in their onboarding. Maybe I talked to them about it in one-on-ones. But at the end of the day, if I'm doing SOPs and documentation and there's nothing that says here's how I expect you to work, I'm frustrated with you,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
but I'm
Yes.
really frustrated with me. Like I wanted you to listen and to do this thing without me having to articulate my vision fully.
Right, right.
And then I hate that. I have to go home, be like, Courtney, I have to go sit with self. I don't want to be the problem. I have to go home and just be like self, and self says, and then we have to just,
Yeah.
but making it explicit, just really challenging myself to be able to find a piece of paper or a document that says, here's the rules of engagement, here's how we do it, has one been a good exercise for me, but it has really cleared up a lot of like misunderstandings, and particularly
Yeah.
around what
So
I would
spelling
consider
it out,
etiquette.
laying the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and is probably the best way to go. Because when I have posed that same thought process to you, what do you, what, how have you worked? What are you normal to? What do you think will work? What hasn't worked for you? And I will get blank stares, and they can't tell me. But when it's laid out, it's a problem sometimes, and it's kind of like a tug and war. What do you think, Tamika?
Um, I definitely agree with everything that you guys have said. I also think that being relatable and creating an environment that is conducive to I'm not going to judge you.
Mm-hmm.
You're free to make mistakes. You're free to express, how you feel about this. I don't know it all. So maybe I can learn something from you that I didn't think about, even though I've been doing this job for, a decade or more.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like including the different generations into the thought process
Mm-hmm.
um, opens up that space of, okay, I kind of feel what you're saying. I'm going to look at it this way, but I'm going to include what you thought about or what you implemented as well. That gets the juices flowing as far as bridging the gap and even feeling comfortable and even going back to like TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
you know, throwing in things that they appreciate or they
Yeah.
value. Still keeping it professional because it is a work environment, but just having that open communication and that freedom to be like you can express yourself, and I won't judge you for it or shut
Mm-hmm.
you down like no, that's not it, we're not doing that. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is a great way to look at it, and being accepting and open, because I know from experience when I've been with the other generations of baby boomers and worked with them, and I was the younger one coming in, it wasn't a bridge of we can work collectively together. It was, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
We've been doing it this way, and we ain't listening to nothing else you're saying to change it. And I think we are a little bit more flexible and more open to ideas because we know what it feels like to not be able to shine in
Yes.
that aspect. So I think that is a great way to bridge that gap between those generations, is to be accepting, understanding, have a place for error, without judgment. And most importantly to me, on spot correction.
Yes.
If it didn't go the way it should go, I'm not gonna let it linger. And I think a lot of people respect that in the long run, being fair, firm, and consistent across the board, is always a good avenue. But doing it with a smile, because it takes the sting out.
Yes.
Right. I'm
So
yeah.
I think this has been a great conversation. I thank each of you for your time tonight. I want Courtney to tell us briefly about her podcast, because I listen to it and I enjoy it. And she's a little radical and I love it. So I want you to tell us about your podcast so we can get some people to go on to your podcast as well and tell a friend to tell a friend about your pod as well as mine. Run with it, Courtney.
Absolutely. My podcast is Cohesive Tangent that I host with my lovely co host and longtime friend from college, where we talk about work and work culture. You can tell I have a lot of opinions. And this is why I had to start my own podcast so I could talk even more about workplace and hopefully how to survive and thrive, if at all
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
And you can listen
Excellent.
on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever podcasts are available to you.
Wonderful. And Tamika, you were doing YouTube for a while. Are you still doing that? Do you have any plugs that you would like to use my platform to do? Because I love and welcome it.
Actually, I haven't done YouTube in like 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
and this may be a reintroduction. I'm not certain. I've kind of been like, I'm a little bit of a radical as well, but I've been shy as far as, wanting to express. But just listen to you guys. I mean, it's definitely something that a lot of people were like-minded in a lot of ways.
Right.
So those conversations, I want to say, Shamika, I really appreciate you for even having the platform and the courage to open up and have those difficult conversations that we shy away from. But as of right now, I don't have any platforms that I'm pushing out. Stay tuned, I guess.
Yes, great. Thank you, ladies, again. And as always, I thank all the listeners. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tune in and subscribe to Conversation with a Modern Girl. Thank you, ladies. I hope you have a blessed rest of the week.
Same to
Enjoy the
you.
rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.